Here we have Botticelli's La Primavera, dating from between 1877 and 1882. So this painting depicts 9 figures in a garden of eternal spring. The title itself, La Primavera, is Italian for springtime. It should be mentioned now that there are many different allegorical interpretations of this painting. Art historians worldwide are unsure of what exactly is unfolding here.
That's right. It's generally agreed on that this scene represents the realm of Venus. The central figure is Venus, goddess of love, with her son Cupid above her. He is blindfolded with his bow drawn and aimed at the figures to the left of the painting, referring to the idea that love is blind. We can also see Mercury, the messenger of the gods, dressed in red to the extreme left of the scene. Iconography helps us with his identification. We see he's wearing a taliera, winged sandals, and his pestius winged hat.
He's also holding an upraised stick in his right hand, so he can ward off clouds to maintain the garden's fair weather.
Yeah, and he really seems to stand alone too. He's separate to everyone else. The figures closest to him are the three graces, shown dancing with interlocking fingers. They're painted nude with a transparent diaphanous fabric draped over them.
That's right, Botticelli did that to show off his talent as an artist. We can tell, though, that he painted from a live model for Mercury, but not for the female figures. Mercury realistically appears to be resting his weight on his left leg in a contrapposto stance, and his anatomy is more naturalistic than the Graces, for example, whose bodies are long, curved, and rather Gothic in appearance. They also have bulging stomachs to suggest their fertility.
The figure of Venus is interesting too. She resembles the Virgin Mary with her head tilted to one side and in her modest pose. With her raised hand, she promotes peace and engages the viewer by making eye contact.
The 3 figures on the right don't entirely reflect that sense of peace, though.
No, not at all. We can see the winged Zephyr, god of wind, draped in a blue fabric on the extreme right. He's in the act of abducting Flora, who's shown naturally in distress with the length of a floral vine coming from her mouth.
Yeah, that looks a bit odd, but it's probably meant to suggest her transformation into the figure next to her, Chloris, or Spring. We can see Chloris dressed in a floral gown and scattering flowers over the grass.
The composition is interesting in itself, but all the separate groups of figures on the left are Mercury by himself, then the 3 graces, in the centre are Venus and Cupid, and on the right are Chloris, Flora and Zephyr. The colour scheme is mostly dark versus light and pale figures against the dark green foliage, but the red is striking and used sparingly.
I think our attention as viewers, though, is focused primarily on Venus. She's central, she stares back at the viewer, and she wears that bright red drapery. What also draws our attention to her is the halo of light that surrounds her head. Her presence is made even more bold by the tree positioned directly behind her, which gives her form a heavy outline against the pale sky of the halo.
We can even say that Cupid forms the top of a sprawling triangular composition.
And there's verticality too. The long figures give a prominent vertical line in the painting, which is also indicated by the tree trunks behind the figures.
And the trees close off this space as well, giving the garden a flat and confined feel. There's some atmospheric perspective between the trees, alluding to the expanse of space beyond the garden, but it's barely noticeable. For this reason, I think the scene is very frontal, and the figures act like a procession on an architectural frieze.
They're framed as well by the canopy of the trees above and by the grass below. But what's really interesting about the foliage is the sheer number of plants.
That's right. There are a plenty hundred of species of plant life in this painting. In real life, they wouldn't all bloom at the same time. This is a perfect garden of spring, so here they do.
The oranges we see in the canopy are important as well because they were one of the symbols of the Medici family.
That's true, and this was painted for Lorenzo de Priera Francesca de' Medici, who was the cousin of Lorenzo the Magnificent. The Medicis, of course, a very important Florentine banking family with huge influence at the time.
They would have been interested in humanism and Neoplatonic ideals, concepts like ideal beauty and absolute love. Neoplatonism actually tried to combine the thoughts of Greek philosopher Plato with the ideals of Christianity.
Botticelli clearly intended for this painting to show his client's love of art and culture. It's currently on display in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence alongside several other works by this artist.